Am I actually just really fucking stupid? Let's find out. Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protest nor force can touch it. Evil always carries the seeds of its own undoing. It creates unease, but stupidity feels self-satisfied, immune, and convinced of its own rightness. And that makes it far more dangerous. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Well, who cares what this guy says? He's a pedophile. Probably. That's what I would say if I was Hassan.
What if I told you that stupidity isn't just the absence of intelligence, but something far more insidious?
What is it?
A force that can transform brilliant minds into instruments of destruction. What if the greatest threat to civilization isn't evil people doing evil things, but ordinary people who've simply stopped thinking?
Well, it is. I even have people so stupid in my life that they're accusing me of things that I didn't fucking do, right? Because they're that fucking stupid. The thing about evil persons is at least you can talk to them because they know what they're doing is wrong. A stupid person won't even get if you reason with them. They're just like, I don't know. Like, you know someone's stupid if they say, I can't tell you why you're wrong, but I still disagree. If you can't apply logic to why you think the way you think, you're a fucking idiot. Any stance that you have that you can't defend, you should pivot. And that's how I genuinely feel.
This. A renowned scientist with multiple degrees suddenly starts believing and spreading dangerous misinformation.
Yep.
A compassionate teacher begins endorsing harmful ideologies.
Yep.
A loving parent starts making decisions that endanger their own children. These aren't evil people. They're intelligent, well-meaning individuals who've fallen victim to what Dietrich Bonhoeffer called the power of stupidity. And here's what makes this truly terrifying. It's not happening to other people. It's happening to people just like you and me. This isn't just philosophical speculation.
If you guys were to rate my intelligence on a scale from 1 to 10, what would you give me? I would say 7. I don't think I'm smart about a lot of things, but I think the things that I do really focus on, I feel like I got that shit pretty locked down, to be completely honest. But general knowledge is pretty rough for me, man. General knowledge is pretty rough. You guys street smarts? Yeah, I'm not book smart at all. Anyways, I can't read. You know, it's hard.
1961, Stanley
I'm black, right? Like, I had a rough childhood, man. I couldn't afford a good education.
Pilgrim conducted his infamous obedience experiments at Yale University.
Okay.
Ordinary volunteers were instructed by an authority figure to administer what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to another person. Despite hearing screams of agony, 65% of participants delivered shocks they thought could be lethal.
Yeah.
These weren't sadists or mentally ill. They were normal people who had temporarily surrendered their capacity for independent moral judgment. This is exactly what Bonhoeffer witnessed firsthand in Nazi Germany, and it led him to develop one of the most unsettling theories about human nature ever conceived.
Oh shit.
Before we dive deeper, I have to ask, have you ever found yourself believing something simply because everyone around you believed it too?
I always thought that Michael Jackson was a pedophile, but apparently he was just weird. Yeah. So yeah, no, for sure. That's definitely happened in my life, for sure.
Keep that question in mind as we explore what might be one of the most important psychological insights of the modern era. Dietrich Bonhoeffer wasn't your typical philosopher sitting in an ivory tower, pondering abstract ideas. He was a German Lutheran pastor who watched his entire society transform before his eyes. Born in 1906 into an intellectual family, his father was a prominent psychiatrist and neurologist. Bonhoeffer had every reason to believe in the power of education and rational discourse. But as the Nazi Party rose to power, Bonhoeffer witnessed something that shattered his faith in human rationality. He watched as his fellow Germans, educated, cultured, religious people, began supporting policies and leaders that contradicted everything they claimed to believe. These weren't ignorant masses being manipulated by clever propaganda. These were professors, doctors, clergy members, and intellectuals who were actively participating in their own intellectual surrender. From his prison cell in 1943, waiting to be executed for his role in a plot to assassinate Hitler, Bonhoeffer wrote what would become his most haunting observation. Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protests nor the use of force accomplish anything here.
They can't learn.
Reasons fall on deaf ears.
Jesus.
What made this observation so chilling wasn't just its context, but its precision.
Yep.
Evil, he noted, always carries within itself the germ of its own subversion. It creates unease, resistance, eventual breakdown. But stupidity? It believes it's doing good, making it absolutely immune to correction.
Yep.
Perhaps Bonhoeffer...
And the worst thing is that the law favors the stupid. That's what's crazy. Because the thing about stupid people is they can tell such good lies because they actually think they're telling the truth because they're that stupid. It's so bad, bro.
His most prescient
It's
insight
so
was
bad.
about how stupidity serves existing power structures. Malicious people
Like, you'll see people crying on the internet, screaming bloody murder about atrocity in their life that never happened because they believe it. They've tricked themselves into believing their own delusion.
know they're doing wrong, which creates internal conflict and eventual breakdown.
And it looks
But
so
people
real.
caught in functional stupidity believe they're doing good, making them absolutely resistant to correction. This isn't accidental. Those in power don't need to actively suppress information anymore. They just need to create conditions where processing information honestly becomes prohibitively difficult. When Bonhoeffer used the word stupidity, he wasn't talking about low IQ or lack of education. He was describing something far more complex, what we might call functional stupidity or willful ignorance. In his letters from prison, he explained, "The fact that the stupid person is often stubborn must not blind us to the fact that he is not independent. In conversation with him, one virtually feels that one is dealing not at all with him as a person, but with slogans, catchwords, and the like that have taken possession of him." Here's what made Bonhoeffer's theory so revolutionary. He argued that stupidity often emerges not from individual failings, but from systemic pressures that make thinking independently both difficult and costly. The truth is, our economic systems actively incentivize intellectual shortcuts. Social media platforms make billions when users react emotionally rather than think critically.
Yep.
News outlets get more clicks with outrage than nuance.
True.
Politicians win elections with simple slogans.
Nuance no longer exists in pretty much anything. You have to go with the most extreme title whatsoever. It's really bad. Here's a great example. Let's talk about criminals. If someone sexually harassed someone and then showed them, let's say someone touched a woman on the shoulder, right? The headlines wouldn't say sexually harasser. They would say rapist. That person's a rapist. If you touched a woman inappropriately, that's not sexual harassment. And then if you were to clarify, well, actually, they just touched the woman on the shoulder, then you get called a rape defender, right? That's just how the internet works. It's bad. It really is. Galatians 4:16. It is a great quote. I am your enemy now because I've told you the truth. It is a great quote.
Slogans rather than complex policy proposals. When people are working multiple jobs, drowning in debt, and constantly bombarded with information, intellectual surrender becomes a survival strategy.
It does. You have to stoop down to their level and be as dumb as them, otherwise they will turn on you. Intellectual surrender. What a great phrase. I'm going to steal that. That's great.
Economists call
That's genius.
rational ignorance emerges. It becomes more efficient for individuals to remain uninformed about complex issues than to invest the time and energy required for genuine understanding. But this individual rationality creates collective irrationality, exactly the dynamic Bonhoeffer observed in Nazi Germany. The result isn't just individual choice, it's structural pressure toward intellectual surrender.
This is the exact reason why I had issues with the gotcha community, because me shit-talking the companies they saw as blind hatred, when in reality, I was criticizing these games, that way they would treat their players better, as well as start operating less as scumbag corporations, right? But people just saw, this guy said this game bad, this mean he thinks this game bad, this mean he think I'm stupid, when in reality was, guy cares a lot about the game because he's played it for years and he wants appropriate treatment for players by criticizing the company in order to hopefully have them do some type of middle ground and meet the consumers in the middle to give proper rewards while also players deliver them proper player base, just meet in the middle here. We keep playing your games as long as you treat us well, you know what I mean? Otherwise we'll quit, right? We don't want to do that, but it's like at a point I just had to surrender to do anything because that was destroying my fucking career. It was me trying to help the players and keep the companies responsible and accountable was destroying my career and my PR. I'm still getting shit on by Arknights and Genshin and the entire Hoyoverse community because I try to help them. It's insane how dumb these people are.
And our brains stress.
And all the streamers who bend the knee and actually give in to the great word, who intellectually surrender these points are now the top streamers. And every single streamer in the top of Genshin category, and the top of Honkai Star Rail, and the top of Zenless Zone Zero are all Hoyoverse dick suckers. That's all they are, and that is the truth. Let's continue here.
and overwhelmed are perfectly designed to comply. While economic systems push us toward intellectual shortcuts, our brains are actually wired to comply. Leon Festinger's groundbreaking research on cognitive dissonance in the 1950s showed exactly how this works psychologically. When people encounter information that contradicts their beliefs, their brains fight to reject it. But here's what Bonhoeffer understood that modern psychology has confirmed. This process is amplified when people are stressed, overwhelmed, or economically insecure. Exactly the conditions our current systems create. Bonhoeffer observed that stupidity often emerges in group settings, writing, "It becomes clear that stupidity is not a psychological problem, but a sociological one." He noticed that perfectly rational individuals would abandon their critical thinking abilities when they became part of a larger group or movement. This insight was decades ahead of its time. Solomon Asch's conformity experiments in the 1950s.
You see a lot of this for trendy topics, right? Like let's be real, guys. I mean, even the let's just call a spade a spade. The trans community is acting like you're in the right if you want to chop your child's dick off and put fucking hormone blockers in them at age 8. Because if any of them say, no, you shouldn't do that, you're called transphobic. So people's desire to fit in leads them to be intellectually dishonest. Everybody knows experimenting on children and doing life-altering surgeries before they're old enough to make their own decisions is a cruel and horrible thing to fucking do.
Demonstrated exactly what Bonhoeffer had witnessed. When surrounded by...
It's like the gay people who defend the gay pride parades. Everybody knows a bunch of grown adult men walking with their dicks out in the street in front of children is a horrible thing to do. But they defend it or you're called homophobic. It's insane.
A group giving obviously wrong answers, 75% of people will go along with the crowd at least once, even when they know the group is wrong.
Yep.
Now, imagine how this plays out in our digital age. Social media algorithms create echo chambers that make this transformation easier than ever.
Oh yeah, like if you're a gotcha creator and you don't, if you say Tectone bad, you immediately get 1,000,000 updude points. If you're part of the wider demographic and you say Asmongold bad, you get 1,000,000 updude points. Because that is what they want you to say. They don't want you to think, they just want you to say, this is the thing we want you to say it and now we're cool. It's pathetic.
A 2018 study by MIT researchers found that false information spreads 6 times faster than true information on social platforms. But here's the crucial...
And it's very obvious to know why that is because a fictitious version of reality will always be more entertaining than the truth. It will. That's why cartoons are watched more than documentaries, because they're more fun.
Insight. It's because false information often feels more emotionally satisfying than complex truths.
Yep.
When someone shares misinformation that confirms their worldview, they're participating in a system that rewards intellectual shortcuts over careful analysis. The algorithm feeds them more of the same, creating echo chambers that act like intellectual quicksand. Have you ever noticed how your social media feed seems to show you exactly what you want to see? That's not an accident. It's the architecture of chosen ignorance in action. We see this pattern play out repeatedly throughout history. The Salem witch trials weren't conducted by evil people, but by God-fearing community members who genuinely believed they were protecting their neighbors. The Red Scare of the 1950s wasn't driven by malicious actors, but by patriotic Americans who sincerely thought they were defending democracy. In each case, intelligent, educated people abandoned critical thinking in favor of group consensus and emotional certainty. If our brains and systems are rigged against us, how do we fight back? Bonhoeffer believed that breaking free from stupidity requires what he called costly grace, the willingness to think independently even when it's painful, unpopular, or dangerous. But now we understand we're not just fighting social pressure. We're fighting millions of years of evolution and billion-dollar algorithms designed to exploit our mental shortcuts. On an individual level, we can cultivate what psychologists call intellectual humility, the recognition that our knowledge is always incomplete and potentially wrong. This means actively seeking out information that contradicts our beliefs, not to torture ourselves, but to test whether our beliefs are worth holding.
This is the reason why I wanted to talk to Destiny, by the way. I actually love talking to people who disagree with me to understand where's the middle ground, how much am I in the right on, how much am I in the wrong on, and which side is more favorable for me to lean on, basically on which side I believe is holding the most truth, because not every situation is black or white. I love talking to people who I disagree with.
Here are some concrete practices that can serve as your daily resistance.
It's one of the other reasons why I went from pro-choice to pro-life. I had a conversation with a pretty smart guy called Zizix. And yeah, because I was very pro-choice for a long time, but I became pro-life later because I feel like it makes more sense for what I believe. is the best thing for our children as well as our women.
Against intellectual surrender. First, practice intellectual friction. Set aside time each week to read thoughtful arguments from people who disagree with you, not to change your mind necessarily, but to test whether your convictions can withstand scrutiny. Second, embrace productive ignorance. When you find yourself absolutely certain about something, ask what evidence would change your mind. If you can't think of any, that's a red flag.
Yep.
Third, slow down your sharing. Before posting anything online, take 60 seconds to verify it from an independent source. That brief pause can...
You know, it's crazy. I did this with a conversation with MTash, and then I was being called a gaslighter and a manipulator. I literally said these phrases verbatim. What could I say to get you to change your mind? And he called me a gaslighter and a manipulator. Because that's how much in his own ways he was. He said if I was attempting to change his mind, it was because I was manipulating him. No, brother. This is called having an adult conversation about two conflicts of opinions. So stupid. I got so much shit for like 9 months over that conversation.
break the
What evidence would you accept? None. Shut the fuck up.
algorithmic cycle that feeds on our emotional reactions. Finally, practice saying, I don't know, when you actually don't know something.
Dude, I will admit, I say I don't know all the time if you've ever seen Steak and Eggs, because when I don't know, I say I don't know. And I get called retarded. I get called retarded for just being honest and admitting when I don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't like talking about what I don't fully know what I'm talking about. But, dude, society has conditioned you to lie and say that you do know things that you don't know, otherwise you will be mocked. By the way, World War II was in 1939 to 1945. Been hearing about that for 3 years. And by the way, Dark Souls 2 is not trash. It's a great game.
In a world that rewards confident ignorance over humble uncertainty, admitting gaps in your knowledge becomes a radical act. But individual practices aren't enough. We also need structural changes that make intellectual honesty easier and more rewarding. This means requiring social media platforms to disclose their algorithmic biases and how they curate content. It means funding comprehensive public media literacy campaigns that teach people how to evaluate sources and evidence.
I think this is great. This is a
It
great
means
video.
designing online platforms that reward intellectual humility over tribal certainty. Most importantly, we need economic policies that reduce the stress and uncertainty that make people vulnerable to intellectual shortcuts. When people aren't constantly worried about healthcare, housing, and employment, they have more mental bandwidth for careful thinking about complex issues. Bonhoeffer's theory was brilliant for its time, but here's what he couldn't have known. This isn't just about moral surrender or social pressure. Modern neuroscience reveals something far more unsettling. Our brains are literally wired to fall into functional stupidity. Think about it. Bonhoeffer witnessed Nazi propaganda spreading through newspapers and radio broadcasts, but we're living through something exponentially more dangerous. We've gone from Nazi propaganda to social media algorithms that know exactly which psychological buttons to push, and now we're entering the age of AI deepfakes that can fabricate reality itself. The threat isn't just escalating, it's targeting the very architecture of human cognition. This isn't just about Nazis or propaganda, it's about the wiring of your brain. Our minds evolved to prioritize...
Like, genuinely, AI deepfakes, man, like, is about to put OnlyFans industry, like, completely out of business. Legit, one photo of a man or woman, and you can pretty much do anything you want with them. Dude, OnlyFans is fucking over. Movies is fucking over. You know what I mean? Like, dude, even streaming, like, streaming's gonna be over very soon, right? All you need is one image of one person. You have AI Asmongold. I'm gonna do my best to not get replaced by AI by working with AI. I'm gonna be real. I will be the person who creates AI Tectone streams, and I will be running that shit 24/7. Absolutely.
Speed over accuracy, to trust familiar sources over unfamiliar ones, and to seek information that confirms what we already believe. These were survival features that helped our ancestors make quick decisions when hesitation meant death. The scariest part? We're all vulnerable, no matter how smart we think we are. The mechanism is exactly what Bonhoeffer described. When people feel threatened and uncertain, they become more susceptible to authoritative-sounding explanations that reduce complexity to simple narratives. But here's the crucial insight that makes Bonhoeffer's warning more urgent than ever. We're not just dealing with human manipulation anymore. We're facing systems designed by artificial intelligence to exploit our cognitive vulnerabilities with surgical precision. Every click, every pause, every emotional reaction is being analyzed and weaponized against our capacity for independent thought. We saw this play out in real time during COVID-19. Doctors, engineers, and lawyers, people with demonstrated analytical abilities, began sharing debunked theories about vaccines and treatments. These weren't failures of intelligence. They were failures of intellectual independence under unprecedented pressure.
I think it really sucks that I lived in Canada when the COVID vaccines were coming out, because I feel like everybody should have known, hey, this new disease that just spawned 2 weeks ago, they already have a vaccine for it. That's not how medicine works. I have never felt the same since getting vaccinated. And I wish I lived in a country at that time that wasn't forcing its entire citizens to get vaccinated, like what, 3 times? Or else you couldn't do anything, bro. Like, I'm so jealous of people who did not get vaxxed for COVID. Now, other vaxes like measles and like the other shit you get, like fucking boilerplate vaccines, are obviously great. They've been developed over decades, right? But COVID vaccine coming out in 2 weeks? Yeah, fucking right. I never wanted to put that shit in my body.
Bonhoeffer paid the ultimate price for refusing to surrender his intellectual independence. He was executed by hanging on April 9th, 1945, just weeks before Germany's surrender. His last words, according to a fellow prisoner, were, "This is the end. For me, the beginning of life." His sacrifice wasn't just about political resistance, it was about defending the very possibility of human thought. He understood that when people stop thinking independently, they stop being fully human. They become, in his words, puppets, whose strings are pulled by whatever force happens to be strongest at the moment. But here's what makes Bonhoeffer's final challenge so relevant today. Who stands fast? When the pressure to conform is overwhelming, when thinking independently requires courage, when the cost of truth is higher than the price of comfortable lies, who stands requires courage when the cost of truth is higher than the price of comfortable lies?
Oh, trust me, man. I look forward to making the internet realize that so many of them are liars because they took the route of comfortable truth, as well as many streamers. I look forward to that day so much. It is going to feel sexual.
Who stands fast?
Oh, it's going to be
The answer isn't
so
found in
hot.
superior intelligence or education. It's found in the daily choice to remain curious rather than certain, to seek truth rather than comfort, to think carefully rather than react quickly. These aren't heroic acts. They're ordinary practices that become extraordinary when everyone around you has stopped doing them. The tragedy is that intellectual surrender often feels like liberation. Thinking is hard work. It's uncomfortable to hold complex, contradictory ideas in your mind simultaneously. It's painful to admit you might be wrong about something important. But Bonhoeffer argued that this discomfort is the price of remaining human. In a world that profits from our intellectual surrender, choosing to think for ourselves becomes a radical act.
Guys, how many videos did you see of me having pirate softwares back when everybody was telling me I shouldn't, right? The pirate software wasn't black and white. He fucked up tremendously on a lot of things, but he was also a victim in a lot of things as well. I could have just said pirate software bad and the video 1 million views, right? But I was like, well, no, he was actually fine for this, but this is the real bad thing that he did. But the problem is people want to say, oh, this guy did one thing bad. Now everything else they did in their entire life is bad. That's not how it works. If you need to make up a reason for someone to be bad, they're probably not that bad. If the truth isn't enough to make them bad, maybe observe that. But just because one person did, like for example, even though Hassan is a horrific piece of shit by saying the Houthis deserve a Nobel Peace Prize, that doesn't mean that if Hassan were to raise $10,000 for charity that it's a bad thing. That doesn't mean that Hassan playing video games is a bad thing. That doesn't mean that what shows Hassan watches are terrorist propaganda. That's just not how it works, right? Just say, these are the bad things. This is why they're bad, because of these real things. And then just say, the other things are good, but they overwhelmingly outweigh the positives, right? Because that's just how it works, right?
This brings us to perhaps the most uncomfortable truth of all.
We are in the most
We're all
unnuanced
susceptible to
media.
functional
Absolutely.
stupidity. The moment we think we're immune,
Like
we've
people
already
want to say Asmongold is stupid because he's unclean, he smells bad, and he doesn't take care of his room, right? But then you look at what he says, and 99% of the time, it's usually pretty on the nose. It's usually pretty spot on, right? He's only had a couple of bad takes, like saying Dark Souls 2 was a bad game. Fuck you for that, by the way. It's a great game. Probably going to beat that today. Well, I have a massage at 2 o'clock, so we'll see.
begun to succumb. The price of intellectual freedom is eternal vigilance, not against external enemies, but against our own tendency to stop thinking when thinking becomes difficult. Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity is unsettling precisely because it's so accurate. We see it everywhere. Intelligent people believing obviously false things, educated individuals making catastrophically bad decisions, well-meaning citizens supporting policies that contradict their own values. The problem isn't that people are getting less intelligent, it's that our systems increasingly reward intellectual shortcuts over careful thinking. But within this sobering diagnosis lies genuine hope. If stupidity is partly chosen, it can also be rejected. If it's partly structural, structures can be changed. If it's the result of cognitive overwhelm, we can create conditions that make thinking easier rather than harder. Think of critical thinking like physical exercise. It's uncomfortable at first, but essential for strength.
I want to be called out right now. I'm going to admit that I was wrong about something. Tell me the stupidest shit I've ever said, Chad. You guys got to remember. Tell me the worst takes I've ever had. I'm going to double down on the ones I still believe in, and I'm going to surrender the ones that I don't actually believe in. Attack on Titan is bad? No, Attack on Titan is good, but then the final arc is shit, and the ending is just word code. It's just worse code gas. I still stand by that author had no idea on how to wrap up that show. Spoons, I do believe that spoons are good to have. Dark Souls 2 is a good game. It is a good game. XQC is overrated. I said that because I was jealous.
Just as we wouldn't expect to run a marathon without training, we can't expect to navigate complex information without practicing intellectual discipline. The mental muscles required for independent thought need regular use, or they atrophy. The next time you find yourself absolutely certain about something, the next time you catch yourself dismissing contradictory evidence without consideration, the next time you feel the comfort of having all the answers, remember Bonhoeffer's warning. Functional stupidity doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It whispers that you already know everything you need to know. And in that moment of recognition, you have a choice. Will you surrender your mind for the comfort of certainty, or will you choose the more difficult path of intellectual independence? The question Bonhoeffer leaves us with isn't whether we're smart enough to avoid stupidity. It's whether we're committed enough to keep thinking when thinking becomes inconvenient, uncomfortable, or costly. In a world that profits from our intellectual surrender, choosing to think carefully and independently becomes one of the most important things we can do. Here's my challenge to you. This week, find one belief you hold strongly and spend 30 minutes researching the best arguments against it. Not to torture yourself, not to become paralyzed by doubt, but...
I literally did this the other day, where I asked Grok, why do people consider Asmund a horrible human being? Because I was like, what if I'm wrong? And then I did the same thing, and I Googled, is Hassan actually a bad guy? I actually researched both. I did this on stream, by the way. I did this on stream.
To practice the kind of intellectual courage Bonhoeffer died defending. If your belief survives honest scrutiny, you'll hold it more confidently. If it doesn't, you'll have learned something valuable about the difference between conviction and truth. The future of human dignity might just depend on how we collectively answer Bonhoeffer's challenge. If this video has made you question something you thought you knew for certain, that's not a weakness. It's the beginning of intellectual courage. Share this video with someone who isn't afraid to think deeply, even when it's uncomfortable. Because in a world designed to profit from our intellectual surrender, the simple act of thinking carefully becomes the most important form of resistance we have. And here's what I want you to remember. Every time you choose curiosity over certainty, evidence over emotion, careful thinking over quick reactions, you're not just protecting your own mind. You're defending the very possibility of human wisdom in an age of artificial stupidity.
Yep.
What's one belief you're willing to question this week? Let me know in the comments. And let's commit to being the kind of people who stand fast when everyone else has stopped thinking.
This might be one of the best videos I've ever watched in my entire life. I loved that shit. I love videos that really just make you think. That was beautiful. And you know what? After having consumed that, I can firmly say I actually don't think that I'm stupid, because I do question every single thing that I think. And I think that's the root point for actually understanding things, is approaching everything you hear with skepticism. So I'm going to give myself a +1 on intelligence. I'm a fucking genius.